100 years old. It was established by the British. Water is being lifted from Goma. It is about 60 kilometers from here, and then it is pumped to the town at a height of 4,800 feet, which this water supply system is also very unique, and this is the highest, I think, in our country.
The Gaiety Theatre is next to the town hall. It's one of the only 3 theatres that the British built in India for their own entertainment. The resident amateur company provided, over the years, dramatic fare typical of a small British town, thrillers, burlesques, operettas, and so on. Occasionally, there were visits from professional companies from back home too.
Oh no! This is Lucy's last letter.
Lucy's last letter? What a title for a picture play.
Yes, Lucy appeals to the imagination like no other woman does. I wonder if you could read it for me. You see, Lucy's a dear girl.
The tradition of amateur dramatics has continued unbroken until the present day. The cast is brown now instead of white, but the repertoire is broadly similar, and men still have to wear a tie to get into a show. What we are watching here is a Bernard Shaw play in rehearsal.
Oh yes, that's good.
Well, you know what they say. If you have got the money, you can afford the view. This is the view from the Viceregal Lodge. Designed by architect Henry Irving and completed in 1888, the building is an impressive example of Scottish baronial architecture. It was fitted out by the finest carpenters of Punjab and furnished by Maple and Company of Piccadilly. Today, bureaucracy prevents us from getting in. When the Viceroy was in residence, he brought with him a retinue of 300 staff, 10 of whom were employed just to keep the birds off the flowers. Lord Curzon complained that you couldn't get out of bed without falling over someone. After independence, the building served as the summer home of the President of India. Through my uncle, who was the President's homeopathic physician, I got to see inside. The 4-poster beds and the gold-plated taps on the Viceroy's bath filled me with curiosity. Negotiations over India's independence were conducted in this building. Now it houses the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies. The lodge stands on a spur. The uniqueness of its position is that if you throw water down the south side of the hill, it flows all the way to the Bay of Bengal. If you throw it down the northern slope, it flows all the way to the Arabian Sea. This is the Accountant General's building, formerly Gorton Castle. It occupies one of the most commanding locations in Simla, next to the site of the original Kennedy House. Built in stone and with a complicated assortment of turrets, it has a very Scottish feel to it. It wouldn't be out of place at the bottom of our street. Next door is another building that has a familiar air. Whenever I wander up to Edinburgh Castle and look down on the Art College with its large windows, specially designed to let in the light, I'm reminded of here. These, though, are the railway offices. The building is an iron frame building assembled here at the turn of the century from materials brought from the UK. 1,000 feet below these buildings, on the north-facing slope of the mountain, is the valley of Annandale, named after a spot in Dumfriesshire. This is an area that the British devoted to their leisure and recreation. The racecourse they made here is the highest in the world. It doubled as a cricket ground, and on special occasions, when fetes were held, would be decked with tents and awnings. Chadwick Falls was a favorite beauty spot where people came to picnic or pursue romance. The glen must surely have been named by a Scot thinking wistfully of his homeland. It's like many another Highland glen I have tramped through on a summer afternoon. In the British days, this was another popular place for strollers. For a few years after independence, Indians continued all these British pastimes. But in the end, enthusiasm waned. In Indian society, organized entertainment focuses on the family, not on a social class. And as for the great outdoors, there's a place you go to work and not to play. Today, I'm almost a solitary visitor to these places. Back on the Ridge Road, the Grand Hotel, with its Italian chef, was renowned as a society meeting place for the British. One diner wrote,
"Farewell to Politi, whose menus delicious have helped our digestion the long season through. Farewell to the scandals, so false and malicious, and all the more piquant for not being true."
At the height of the empire, this was the most important post office between London and Singapore, conveying messages from one seat of power to another. Now, we come to the open space at the top of the town, known as the Ridge. And here's another British institution, the Bandstand, now a restaurant. On this site, where once ceremonies of the Raj were held, boys and girls of the National Cadet Corps prepare for Independence Day celebrations. When I was about 16, it was by writing for a band like this that I began to learn the craft of orchestration. The storage tanks for the water, pumped up from below, lie under the surface. The Ridge is a place where people come to admire the view, though today you can hardly see a donkey's face in front of you. This mock Tudor building that looks as if it has been transported directly from the home counties is the library. Christ Church, a pseudo-Gothic church built by the British in their heyday. Now it serves the small community of Indian Christians. Reverend, tell us about the history of this church.
This is a very old church in Himachal, and it's a beautiful church. It's built in the heart of the city, and it's built by the English people. And you know, this is a viceroy seat, and he used to sit here. And that time, only English people used to come to this church. Indians are not allowed to come to this church.
Really?
Because they said that Indians are dog, so Indian people are not allowed. Now it's become North India. Now it's the Diocese of Amritsar. North India means the CNI, Church of North India Church. That time, this church was an Anglican church. These glass brought from Germany and England. And it shows charity, humility, hope, and faith also.
I notice your name is Chauhan, and Chauhan are warrior classes in India. How come you happen to be a reverend?
So many people put this question that your name is Chauhan and why your name is Chauhan. My father was a Hindu, he was a Rajput, and when he converted, I born in Christian family. In 1965, I joined army and I was selected as a platoon commander. But one day I was reading Bible. When I read Matthew chapter 3, verse 5, it's mentioned there, you are the salt of the world. So I changed my mind. So I thought that I must join ministry. So I prepared myself and I went to theological college in Bareilly, and I spent about 5 years there, and I passed BTH from there. Then I became a priest.
Bishop Cotton School was the first English-style public school in India. The British sent their children here instead of sending them back home to be educated. I asked the headmaster, Mr. Hakim, about the school's past and present.
This school was founded by George Edward Lynch Cotton, who was the Metropolitan of India. Prior to his coming to India, he was the headmaster of Marlborough College, and he came here at a time when there was restlessness in the country after the outbreak of 1857. And when he traveled towards this side, he thought of establishing a school as a Thanksgiving offering. You know, the original aim of Bishop Cotton while establishing this school was that it should be a home of godliness and good learning. And I'm proud to say that in the 131 year of service to the nation, that aim is still here. This school is training boys. They are making leaders for the future, for the country.
Some Indians feel that there is a certain cachet to be had in copying the practices of their former rulers. So although 99% of the boys at this school are Hindus, all the rituals they take part in are Christian. At this Independence Day ceremony, the flags may have changed. The performance stays the same. I'm reminded of Tagore's reference to the dreary desert sand of dead habit. I've only my mother to thank for not being sent here myself, by the way.
Almighty God, we commend our country and our national flag in thy care. May our flag always flutter with honor and pride. Bless our flag and all of us assembled here for thy name's sake. Amen.
Now to Auckland House, which is a similar establishment for girls. Its British equivalent might be Rodin. Principal Rita Wilson fills in the details.
The school was founded in the last century, and it was founded especially to cater to the needs of the European parents of English girls. And to begin with, of course, only English girls and European girls were given admission. In very exceptional cases, an Indian was admitted, but not as a rule till 1947, when the gates of the school were thrown open to Indians. Since then, we've been having Indian girls, primarily Indian girls, and this is a partly residential school, and it enjoys an international reputation. So we have girls coming to the school from virtually all over the world. The Western music tradition in India, especially in this part of the country, seems to be dying out. There's a dearth of teachers here, and we want to keep up the tradition. Here we have a very happy blend of the Western and the Eastern cultures. The the education system, of course, is very much Indian, but we give them a feel of both the West and the East. We teach them Indian dancing, we teach them Indian classical and folk music, besides teaching them Western classical music. So when the girls graduate from the school, we cannot call them westernized, but they are a happy blend of the West and the East, so that they can fit into any kind of society that they move in.
462.
This is the spot where my school stood. Some of the buildings have now slipped down the hill. My chest hurts to see it in the same state as my house, even though I know the place is being reconstructed. The schools we have already seen were not the sort of thing the British originally intended for Indians themselves. In the middle of the 19th century, the reformer Thomas Bevington Macaulay, no doubt influenced by his Scottish Presbyterian background, proposed the creation of an education system for the Indian masses. With a disregard for the philosophy and language of the land that now seems jaw-dropping, he advocated a system that was science-based and conducted entirely through the medium of English. Many Indians found his ideas persuasive. But as the desire for independence grew, this concept no longer seemed satisfactory. A new kind of educational movement emerged. The present headmaster, Mr. R.K. Gupta, explains.
First letter D stands for Dayanand, A stands for Anglo, and V stands for Vedic. That means it is the combination of ancient as well as modern cultures. This is actually Arya Samaj, which had started DAV movement. Arya Samaj was started by the inspiration of Swami Dayanand Saraswati. He died in the year 1883. To commemorate his memory, this movement was started. It was Swami Dayanand who gave the first slogan that I want independence.
Because the Arya Samaj movement recognized the best in both Indian and European approaches, its graduates were ideally placed to play a significant part in the struggle for independence. I have this tradition of open-mindedness to thank for my own independent spirit, for my determination to question everything. Lala Lajpat Rai, a nationalist and newspaper owner, was one of the founders of the DAV College movement and is recognized as one of India's leading freedom fighters. A statue stands on the town square in recognition of his commitment. At over 8,000 feet, Jakhu is the highest point in Shimla. The Jakhu temple is dedicated to Hanuman, the monkey god, the god of devotion. Most visitors climb to this point on a sort of pilgrimage, and this is where the Jarrad brothers struck camp for the night. What I can see from here is how the machinations of a powerful few reverberate down through history, having unanticipated effects on the lives of the many. Because the East India Company existed, the Gerard brothers left their Scottish homeland for the far side of the world. Because the Gerard brothers made their journey here, ultimately, I made mine to the UK. As an English-speaking, cricket-playing little lad, I absorbed a great deal from the dominant British culture here. Looking round the town, it's not hard to see how that happened. Throughout this film, we have seen many other Indians who are still in its grip. At the same time, we have seen Britons who have a fascination with India and have come here to explore their own links with the past. And that, perhaps, is as close as we get to finding causes. We still hear talk of a certain way of life, as though such a thing existed as a fixed entity. But the relationship of one people with another is a process of constant cultural seepage, of continuing change. And it's at the frontiers of change that life and art are interesting. As a human being, I feel proud to be a product of two great civilizations. As a composer, this gives me a unique perspective.